Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Primary Arms PLX HTX-1 pistol optic. The HTX-1 was announced a little bit over a year ago of the filming of this video. And of course, one of the big standouts, one of the big talking points from Primary Arms about the HTX-1 is it's an American-made optic. 99.9% American-made, American manufactured. Here in the United States, kind of gives you the name HTX is Houston, Texas, where Primary Arms is making the PLX HTX-1. And it is an interesting enclosed optic side-load battery, which uses the ACSS Vulcan reticle system, which has been very popular, and we've seen it on some HoloSuns and some other optics that are out there, in the fact that it has a segmented, at least the HTX-1 does, a segmented alignment circle, which helps us acquire our dot from draw stroke for those people who are new to red dot sights. It gives you the ability to kind of shorten the learning curve with dot acquisition and improve your presentation to get your reticle. Obviously, that's a big feature. That's something that Primary Arms is using with the HTX-1, but there's some other things about this optic that are pretty cool too. Talking about specifications, it is a 70-75 aluminum body with multiple footprint options and included plates from Primary Arms. You have an RMR-A or an RMR-B, RMR-A being the flush footprint, RMR-B being the footprint that has a ZEV-style footprint, if you will, that has the raised screw posts, and an MOS plate for mounting directly to the legacy MOS system, Gen 5 and previous. No word yet on a mounting ability for the new MOS system in the Gen 6. However, just looking at the new Gen 6 system with their gasket plate system, the RMR flush plate is going to work fine on that. It gives us a lower ride height on the optic to be able to co-witness with traditional height sights, which is a big advantage for some people, for a lot of people really. As long as window size is there, using your traditional height sights kind of eliminates the need, literally eliminates the need for using suppressor height sights. It's powered by a 2032 battery with a quoted battery life optimally of 20,000 hours. However, there are features built into the HTX-1 that can extend that battery life. Their auto live feature, which is basically what most people refer to as shake awake, under 30 seconds of no activity, no movement, no vibration to the optic, the outer ring will go off, and then after 3 minutes, the entire optic turns off. Any motion after that, such as a draw stroke, is going to turn everything right back on. We have a 4 MOA primary dot. I'm sure other dot sizes will eventually be offered, but that's what dot we're having. And then we have that segmented alignment circle, which gives us the ability on draw stroke, if we're seeing that segmented circle, it tells us which direction we need to go to align the dot. That segmented circle can be turned off just by holding down the positive for 3 seconds, and it clicks off, and then you're only running the 4 MOA dot, which will also extend your battery life. For my review purposes, I mounted it on a Glock 47 MOS, and I started to go through my regular review process. One thing I do like about the ACSS Vulcan system, especially this new iteration of it we're getting with the HTX-1, is we're getting away from that delta point of aim and going with a traditional dot. 4 MOA is kind of a weird size for me. Like, again, everybody can kind of do their own thing, but 4 MOA is a little bit too big for my personal tastes, but it is smaller, obviously, than like a 6 or a 9. So it kind of fits in my opinion, it fits into a category of reticle size that leans more towards competition, but it's still perfectly usable for every other purpose, and it gives us the ability for precise shooting. I zero all my full-size guns, in fact, almost every gun. I'm going to zero it at 25 yards, and 4 MOA, it's still a reasonable size dot for zeroing at 25 yards. The bigger dots like 6.5s, 6s, 6.5s, and 9s can be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more frustrating to zero at 25 yards because they cover up so much of the target. But I didn't have any issues with this thing, putting it on the gun, getting it zeroed. And because it rides at a lower height, I've found that I don't mind if an optic sits higher or lower because it's a handgun. I can easily adjust the height in front of my face. But what I have found is the optics that sit lower are easier to zero. Height over bore is going to be a factor. I think that definitely plays into the ease of things. Mounting is easily straightforward as long as you follow their directions. If you look online, they have a PDF manual that walks you through the mounting and also gives you proper torque, which I do appreciate, because a lot of manufacturers don't tell you what torque they want you to use on their optics and their plates, and that's kind of frustrating, because then you're just kind of guessing. Using appropriate thread locker is always recommended, but torquing to manufacturer specifications is also a good idea. I usually go a little bit higher than what a manufacturer recommends because I just expect them to be a little bit conservative. So if they quote 10, I'll go to 11 or 12 just for my own personal sake. But on this optic for this review, I torqued to their specifications because, well, I'm reviewing their product, and part of that is their specifications and their recommendations for torque. But I use an MOS, obviously, use the MOS mounting plate. It's a super interesting system, the way they designed it. It kind of mates together, which gives us that lower ride height. But ultimately, we're going to see throughout the review process if there were any issues with their proprietary mounting system. First thing that's very noticeable about this optic is that the window is very clear. There isn't really a noticeable notch filter or pass-through filter, or whatever terminology you want to use. The refresh or pulse rate is very good. Dot brightness is fantastic. I've got enough brightness settings to get to confront any traditional lighting situation, I should say, that I'm going to confront when using the optic. I ran it both from duty and from concealment throughout the 2,000 round initial review purpose. And dot acquisition is fantastically easy. I didn't use the segmented circle that much. I did the initial 500 rounds just to get used to it. For me, the segmented circle is not something I need. Although I do appreciate it still being there, and it would be nice if every optic had that feature. One thing, just from my own personal skill set, because I don't need it, it bothers me. It's there and I don't want it there. It makes the presentation of the optic needlessly busy. But with ideal proper presentation, you don't necessarily see it very much under daylight conditions. Under night vision, which we'll get to, that segmented circle is very aggravating. It's going to be something you're probably going to want to turn off. And because I don't really need it for presentation, because I'm already kind of there with getting my dot almost every time I come out of the holster, it's not a feature that I need, and it's going to kind of lessen my battery life a little bit, so it's something I would normally turn off. But I left it on for the first 500 rounds, and there is one situation where I do really appreciate it, and that's one-handed shooting. My two-handed presentation, of course, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I don't get my dot every time, but I know what to do if I don't have my dot. But with one-handed presentations, I get my dot a little bit less than I do with two hands. And again, I know what to do if it's not there, but the segmented circle removes all that guesswork. So most people are going to shoot more two-handed than they will one-handed. So having that feature in the optic, especially for one-handed or support hand or primary hand only shooting, is, I'd consider to be a significant net benefit. And if you're okay with the 20,000 hour ideal battery life, there's no reason to turn it off. I ended up turning it off because, again, I don't really feel like I need it. I don't really need it. It's not something that I have to have because I'm already really confident with my dot acquisition, presentation, and technique. And because I have a lower height, even use traditional height iron sights, those iron sights are blocking some of the window. And the window is a little bit smaller than some of the other optics that are out there. So for me, turning that off, I'm getting as much window. I guess the best way to say this is I would like a little bit more window. I think that's probably the best way to say it. One of the reasons that we can go with a bigger optic body is to get more window, and that could potentially raise the optic up, which then we have to introduce suppressor height sights. So I think their execution in the footprint doesn't preclude them from introducing a larger window, but they didn't. So there's nothing wrong, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the window size itself, but I would have liked to have seen a slightly larger window, but that's on a wish list thing. If we're just talking about the optic as it presents, the optic window is perfectly fine. It's not needlessly or noticeably small, but a larger window would have been nice. As I already kind of mentioned, that refresh, a lot of people use the term refresh, which is a colloquialism of the actual pulse rate of the reticle. And this is something you notice with some optics where if you're transitioning rapidly from target to target, you see like a blink or a flicker or segmentation or whatever terminology you want to use. Not something I noticed on the HTX-1. So rapid transitions between targets, I didn't notice any flickering, any fading, any segmenting in recoil. The dot is consistently crisp. And to me, it's a very good dot. It doesn't have, and again, if you have an astigmatism, this is going to be a factor. It's not, everybody's going to kind of see it a little bit differently, I guess would be the best way to put it. But I didn't have any noticeable issues. I didn't observe any noticeable issues with the quality or the clarity or the circular nature of the dot. That form away dot is clean and crisp, and was clean and crisp throughout the review process. Obviously, if I turn that brightness up, there is a little bit of a blooming effect there. And then there's also some night vision considerations, which we'll get to here shortly. Side load battery. One of the things I've noticed in some other optics with the side load battery caps is they can come loose with recoil. What I generally do is I'll take just a little bit of blue Loctite or purple Loctite, and I'll put just use a Q-tip and put like 2 or 3 dots of it on the battery cap, and then put it on so they don't come loose during recoil. I didn't do that for the review purpose, just because I wanted to see if this thing would come loose. Over 2,000 rounds, it did not. So battery cap is consistently tight. That's going to be a good thing. And the controls are on the left side of the gun, which is going to be inboard for right-handed shooters, outboard for left-handed shooters, but they are recessed enough that I didn't inadvertently adjust my brightness noticeably throughout the review, either from duty or from appendix concealed carry. Brightness settings for low light are fantastic. It's not like I have to make extreme adjustments based on the lighting conditions because the lens doesn't allow enough light to pass through. This is one consideration that we have with some of the older optics which have really noticeable notch filters. Talking specifically about brightness, I used a brightness setting 2 down from maximum for everything that I did, which includes daylight shooting, low light shooting, and night vision shooting, which we'll talk about. That brightness setting gave me a good clear dot that I could use regardless of lighting conditions, that wasn't overly bright, meaning it wasn't blooming, causing a form-away dot to present like a 6 or a 7 or 8 or a 9. Under low light conditions, I used a Surefire X300 Turbo, but I also used a Cloud Defense EPL, and I was able to acquire that dot without problem whatsoever, pushing that many lumens downrange. Also, when I had what I call light barriers coming back at me, some people might use the term photonic barriers. So under low light conditions, the reticle itself is noticeably brighter than the segmented circle. So even if you're leaving that segmented circle on, it's not going to cause blooming or washing, to my eye, that I noticed when shooting in those reduced lighting conditions. Using this thing under night vision, the segmented circle becomes aggravating pretty quickly because of the nature, depending on night vision device and how far you're pressing that gun away from your head. One thing I definitely noticed is during the day, if I go to full presentation with that segmented reticle on, if I have my dot even roughly centered in the middle of the window, I don't really notice the segmented circle because it's outside my plane of view. In night vision, I'm seeing it. It's blooming. I'm noticing that bleed into my optic window. So for night vision shooting, which is a smaller category of shooters, handgun plus night vision, it's just a smaller category of shooters, I'm going to notice that. It's going to be something I want to turn off. But again, it's super easy to turn that off. Now, it does have night vision settings, which I did check. However, I don't use night vision settings. My reason for that, and I explain this in every video when I talk about it, is I come from a pedigree of shooters and training level shooters where I might have to go from night vision to white light. So I always shoot under night vision with whatever setting my daylight setting is. So if I do have to flip my night vision up or look underneath my night vision to get a white light sight picture, I don't also have to turn my dot brightness up. It's not something I want to have to do. So I just use whatever brightness setting. It blooms, but if I'm pushing eye or light down range, it's going to polarize the target anyway, so it's not a factor. But in low light conditions and under night vision conditions, reticle acquisition, dot clarity, brightness, and light transmission were completely usable. Now, light transmission is going to be a factor more for people who are using a monocular system like a PVS 14 or something similar. I'm using 15, so I have binocular vision anyway, so I'm not noticing any significant loss of light transmission through the lens that would prevent me from getting PID on the target that I'm trying to hit. Of course, we want to get into durability, right? As you guys know, I do a shoulder height drop test every 500 rounds. The drop test is not a scientific standard, it is a chaos standard. I'm going to use shoulder height because I'm still the same height I am at the beginning of the review as I will be at the end of the review, dropping it on a hard surface to simulate the optic taking a hard hit. It isn't necessarily to simulate the optic being dropped from shoulder height. It's a uniform, arbitrary standard that I introduced for my testing for duty purposes. For concealed carry, this might not be a big, huge concern for you guys. I also do one-handed manipulations off the optic itself throughout the testing process. And what we're looking for in this testing, what I'm looking for in this testing, is to see if I can cause the optic to lose zero, because it takes a hard hit, or I can cause any kind of breakage. See how strong it is. The front lens of the HTX-1 is extremely recessed based on the nature of the mounting system. I got those 2 screws that mount on that front ledge. The rear lens is recessed enough to my liking. Some rear lenses aren't as protected. I'm more worried about, well, both lenses being broken by, some kind of extreme impact. So every 500 rounds, I'm going to do that drop test. Now, before we get into drop test, let me show you guys. This is my 0 group off the Glock Gen 5 Glock 47. 5 rounds, 124 grain gold dot, 25 yards, bag supported. So that's what my 0's looking like before I got into any of the drops. Then I, as the review went on, doing my drop tests every 500 rounds, here's your drops. Now on that 3rd drop test, I did experience a front lens breakage. The front lens did crack. It kind of spidered a little bit top right and over into the left side of the lens, but it maintained 0. So I kept the review going. Yes, the lens did break, but the optic maintained 0 after that 3rd drop. So I had another 500 rounds to go, and I went ahead and got through that next 500 rounds. Even with the lens broken, I wasn't experiencing any fogging. I don't think the internals of the optic experience any kind of atmosphere change. So it's winter here in Tennessee, getting out of the heated truck onto the range, and I'm shooting in 30-degree or 40-degree weather, sometimes colder, sometimes warmer. I wasn't noticing any issues there. So for my sample size 1 of breakage, it didn't affect in any meaningful way my ability to use the optic or shoot the gun. But I was concerned, how was it going to hold up for that 4th drop? Was I going to lose 0 then? So here's a 5-round group I fired after that 4th drop. So the mounting system is solid. The optic maintains 0. Not only that, but the 4th drop maybe extended the cracks just a little bit, but the optic is still usable. Obviously, this would be something I'd want to get fixed as soon as possible. But what I did learn from this is that the optic can take a beating. And let's be honest, those 4 drops are every time I drop the gun, I'm getting a little bit further away from realism. So 1 shoulder height drop, 2 shoulder height drops, 3 and 4. So yes, I did have a lens breakage, and I don't really care for that. I would have loved to have seen the optic be able to handle that. And again, if I get a second one of these, maybe I make it 6, 7 drops and don't have a lens breakage, or maybe I make it 10, 15. At some point, you kind of got to be like, how many more times am I going to drop this optic to keep it realistic? I think being able to make it through 4, even though I did have a lens breakage, because it maintains 0, proves that the overall redundancies that are built into a durability in a design of an optic have been met. Yes, I did have a lens breakage, but that's okay because it maintains 0, and it's something that in the moment I could still use the firearm if I had to. Oh my God, emergency situation. And then I can just get it replaced. I can get it fixed. I can send it back, and Primary Arms is going to take care of me on the warranty side. Although I think I may be violating the warranty by demonstrating willful dropping the optic from shoulder height on video. I'm not really sure about that. The only bad thing that I found about this optic is availability. These things are really hard to get. The overall features of the optic are fantastic. It fills a really good, I wouldn't even call it a niche category, a very necessary category of people who are interested in shooting red dots, but maybe they don't want to spend a whole bunch of money, and maybe they don't want to spend a whole lot of time or don't have the ability to spend a whole lot of time practicing under live fire to build their proficiency with dot acquisition. So having that ACSS Vulcan reticle, that segmented circle, which is kind of like, some people would call it a crutch. And a lot of people use the term crutch negatively, but what do you use crutches for? To walk until you're healed. People might call it training wheels. What are training wheels for? To teach you how to ride a bike until you don't need them anymore. Eventually you stop using crutches. Eventually you take the training wheels off. And you can do that just by holding down the positive button for 3 seconds. It'll turn that segmented reticle off. You're good to go. Now obviously you can build good dot acquisition proficiency with dry fire. You don't have to fire a single live round to get really good at acquiring your dot on your presentation. But then you need to shoot live rounds to get dot acquisition, transitioning target to target, recoil, things like that. But that being said, having that segmented reticle there, if you're not really worried about the 20,000 hour battery life, is kind of a cool, I guess, insurance policy. it's a nice feature. I would like to see it in every optic as an option for any shooter that wanted it to be there. And like I said earlier in the video, for those one-handed presentations, I like it being there. I don't need it, but it is a nice bit of insurance just in case. I have to shoot from some super weird austere position and I have to shoot one-handed. It would be nice if every reticle had that or every optic had that. And the HTX-1 does have it. So based on price point, features, and durability, this optic is a fantastic choice. Till next time, Aaron Cowan, Stage Dynamics, train accordingly.